Rich, what up, man?
What's up, Dan?
What's going on, bro?
Not a heck of a lot. What's going on with you?
No, I'm just trying to get a little music done and get on with the day. Got a couple different pieces to write. I'm a little behind, but it is what it is. What's going on, dog?
Nothing. We got a lot to talk about to please our fans. It's been a very busy couple of months in boxing.
Right.
And we should get right to it.
So go ahead.
Well, I think we should talk about what happened over the weekend. First at the Barclays Center, where the king of Madison Square Garden, Miguel Cotto, relocated to Brooklyn and turned in a very solid performance against Daniel Geale. And I hear all the detractors, Taz, about how Daniel Geale was shot and how making the 157-pound limit took a lot out of him. But you got to remember, with the exception of him being destroyed by Triple G, the only two losses he had on his resume were split decision losses to Darren Barker and Anthony Mundine. And for the record, I had Geale winning both of those fights. So really, he only came into the Cotto fight with one career loss as far as I'm concerned.
You thought that he beat Darren Barker?
Yes, I thought he lost a split decision to Darren Barker, but I thought Geale won that fight.
All right. I didn't, but all right.
And so, yeah, he came in, and obviously the weight affected him. His trunks were high. You saw that he was very soft in the midsection.
Right.
And he obviously was just going through the motions looking for a payday, which kind of was very disconcerting to me. You know, when a fighter fights like that, the commission should think about revoking his paycheck. You know, there's no room in boxing for a guy who just seems like he's in there just to collect his money and run. But on a positive side, as far as Cotto is concerned, I thought he looked great. You know, he looked refreshed. His jab was great. His shots to the body were beautiful. Cotto was really turned his game up when it comes to throwing those hellacious shots to the body. And his left hook, as always, was present. And, I think the big thing is, I don't know that he's a better fighter under Freddie Roach, because when you take a look at what he's done, Sergio Martinez, for all intents and purposes, was a gimp. He was a cripple when he fought Miguel Cotto. So are we to give Cotto full praise for fighting a guy on one leg? And then, he destroyed Delvin Rodriguez, and I like Delvin Rodriguez. I've interviewed him before, but to me, he's nothing more than a step up above a glorified club fighter. He destroyed Delvin Rodriguez, and now he beats Daniel Geale, who seems like he was only in it to, collect that paycheck. Now everyone's jumping the gun. That Freddie Roach has done such a great job. I think the best thing that Freddie Roach has brought to the Cotto camp is confidence. Cotto turned in an inspired performance against Mayweather. He lost 8 out of the 12 rounds. And then in his next fight after that, he looked kind of old against Austin Trout. And even though I had Trout winning 7 rounds to 5, and it was close, Cotto looked uninspired, and he looked like he was, past his prime.
I mean,
so,
to me,
what Freddie Roach has done is given Miguel Cotto more confidence, and there's nothing more dangerous than reawakening a sleeping giant.
Well,
and that's what Roach has done, I think.
The thing to me about Miguel Cotto was that at his best weight, he was a 140-pound fighter, right? I mean, that's where he made his bones. He's a 140-pound guy, and he was a wrecking ball. He was a knockout artist. He's a guy that still goes for the knockout. He's never stopped really having a knockout mentality, even prior to really being with Freddie Roach. I think what Roach has done is he's revisited Miguel's 140-pound self, and turned that into a reasonable facsimile of himself at 54. He's still not a middleweight. But I think that the quality of opposition has a lot to do with his renaissance. When you look at Geale, I didn't think he beat Barker. I thought that, Barker softened him up a little bit, exposed him somewhat. Golovkin leveled him. Even though he got a win over his countryman recently, I didn't think that really did anything to offset what Golovkin did to him. He had no business in the ring with Miguel Cotto. We have weight divisions in boxing for a reason. When you're slated to be a 160-pound fighter, you're already shedding a lot of weight to make that weight, and then to get in at 57 and come in 25 pounds heavier on the day of the fight, I mean, that's a problem. You're going to be sluggish. And so, you feed Cotto an ensemble of Sergio Martinez, who was never really healed. I have my own feelings about Martinez as an elite guy. Anyway, I think that he got way too much credit for the Paul Williams wins and things of that nature. But be that as it may, Miguel Cotto didn't fight a 100% Sergio Martinez. He didn't get in there with an elite guy in Delvin Rodriguez. And to me, he was in there with a shell of a Daniel Gill the other day. That said, he has displayed spectacular form. Cotto is obviously headed for the Hall of Fame. He's had an outstanding career. The island of Puerto Rico needs to be proud of him. They are. Shows up in New York every time he fights. But he's going to run into a buzzsaw against Canelo Alvarez if he faces him this fall. And I think that what Freddie Roach has done is giving people fool's gold. Cotto is still the guy that was in there with Austin Trout as far as I'm concerned. He's still the same guy that was in there with Floyd a couple of years ago. And to me, he's he signed a great deal with Rock. Jay-Z was smart in orchestrating that deal. And, I mean, if he gets the Canelo fight, it goes to 9 or 10 rounds. He gets stopped because his skin is not what it was when he was younger. I mean, he busts up easily. And I just think that if he gets a swan song fight after that, then he's done all he can do for the sport of boxing and for himself and for his family. So, here's my rant. I'm getting ready to write about it a little bit, so it's kind of on my mind, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. And with regards to Canelo against Cotto, I like the fact that Canelo takes on all comers. After he lost to Mayweather, a lot of people would have taken easy fights. But Canelo just doesn't take easy fights. He fought Austin Trout. He fought Erislandy Lara. And even if you thought he lost both of those fights, both of those guys have good lateral movement, good jabs, and are very, very tough fighters to look good against. And then obviously he fought Angulo and James Kirkland, who were tailor-made for Canelo.
Right.
They don't believe in defense. They're both very slow with their hands. And Canelo dispatched both of them in fairly easy fashion. I almost think Canelo was getting too much credit for both of those wins because Angulo is basically a shot fighter, and all that he has left is heart. And James Kirkland, even though he did land some punches in the first round against Canelo, they were basically arm punches. And Kirkland really has nothing left either. With regards to how Canelo would fare against Cotto, first let me say this: has there ever been any more pressure on a trainer than Freddie Roach? And I like Freddie Roach. I'm a fan of his. He's 7-time Trainer of the Year, award winner by the Boxing Writers Association of America. But before we put Freddie Roach in the same league as a Ray Arcel or an Angelo Dundee or an Eddie Futch, here's a guy where, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, Canelo destroys Cotto. He'll have lost two of the most relevant fights of the past 10 to 15 years. Pacquiao, under Roach's tutelage, loses to Mayweather. And now if Cotto loses to Canelo, I don't care what anyone says. This will affect Freddie Roach's legacy.
Well, I don't know about all of that. I disagree with that.
Than Cotto.
I disagree with that. I think that, first of all, Manny Pacquiao wasn't blown away by Floyd Mayweather. All right? It was a sorry-ass fight. It was a terrible event relative to all of the hype. Everything about the hype was anticlimactic going into that fight. We know about the Toradol and all of the things that go on with the shoulder and this and that or whatever. It's unfortunate that came up in the aftermath, but he wasn't blown away by Floyd Mayweather. So that's not really a bad loss as a trainer. And then when you take a look at the body of work that he was able to accomplish with Manny Pacquiao, turning him from a very green guy who had no real amateur pedigree into what he became, I'm sorry, that's in and of itself is worthy of all of the accolades that he's gotten. Not only that, but he's worked with so many different world champions under his tutelage. I mean, if you really want to talk comparison, how many people have have developed, into that from Floyd Mayweather Sr., comparably speaking. You know what I mean? He was in there with Ricky Hatton, who got damn near killed by Manny Pacquiao. So, and there's another, situation that you might want to mention there too, with respect to Freddie Roach, and it has a lot to do with the fact that he himself was a disciple of Eddie Futch. So all he did was take all of the nuances that Futch was able to give him and transfer that over into a number of world champions, despite the fact that he's been battling Parkinson's all this time. So I don't think that there's really anything that you can say to discredit Roach. I don't know that he's going into a fight with Cotto facing Canelo Alvarez with any more pressure than he had with this particular fight that took place on May 2nd. So that's kind of how I see that. Hey, buddy.
Well, the reason why I bring this up is because you read social media, Taz, and you hear about how Roach is slowing down because of his disease. And
he is slowing down. He's slowing down badly.
Headaches all the time. That maybe he's actually no longer an asset to his fighters. That maybe he's hurting them more than he's helping them.
Could be.
A lot of people have asked me about the Mayweather fight. They write to my inbox, what do you think about the fight? So for the record, and I guess we can only talk about this one more time because people are sick about Mayweather Pacquiao. But
so am I.
Since we're starting our video channel, it's very important for me at least to just vent a little bit, just get it out there one last time. I saw the fight live. I had Mayweather winning 8 rounds to 4, 116, 112. For the record, I picked Pacquiao to get a split decision victory, and my logic was that you look at the most popular fighters that Mayweather has fought over the past, 10 to 15 years. One was Oscar De La Hoya, and he won a split decision, and the other one was Canelo Alvarez, and Judge C.J. Ross fought that fight an improbable draw, and Mayweather dominated that fight. So I thought, skill-wise, I thought Mayweather would win the fight, but I thought the judges would give it to Pacquiao because Mayweather's behavior outside the ring, and I thought, the close rounds, the judges would go out of their way to give the decision to Pacquiao, and I couldn't have been further off.
No, I don't think that you. I don't really think that you were. I read your dissertation prior to the fight. I know that you had a split decision, and to be honest with you, I think that you were right. I think that the fight turned out exactly the way you thought it would. I didn't really see a definitive victory from Mayweather. I really don't want to spend that much time on this because, like you well know, it took me about 3 weeks or so to really get past the malaise of that event. 5-6 years of your life engulfed in a particular fight that you worked really hard to try to put in front of the public, to keep pushing for the fight and for the event. I thought that it would be a historically great fight. I thought that it would be a fight that you could compare to some of the best fights that's ever taken place, not just in modern history, but in the annals of history in the sport, period. I thought that the matchup was so ripe for compelling drama in theater. And one guy, Mayweather, decided to turn it into an exhibition. I knew going into the fight, when you hear him saying on the eve of it after the weigh-in that he's got to be smart, the way he was talking, his posture, his body language, that he was going to do everything he could to fight a safety-first fight and fight in such a way not to lose. Pacquiao goaded him. He chased him around for a couple of months there. He did some things out of character in the months and weeks leading up to the fight just to try to egg Mayweather on and to force him into a compelling fight. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but one of the things that I wrote about when we were talking about it and spreading it around and everybody else was caught up in the fervor of the moment with that fight. When Shane Mosley got into the ring after he beat Juan Manuel Marquez, a fight I got to throw out there, people don't like me for this, but Marquez was a 135-pound guy. He gets him in there at 144. Mayweather deliberately cheats this guy on the scales at 146. And afterward, was when Larry Merchant, of course, came after him. And then Shane Mosley got into the ring and challenged him. I saw Mayweather on the eve of that fight with Shane Mosley. I was in Las Vegas for a couple of weeks during that time. And I was never more impressed with Floyd Mayweather than I was in the Shane Mosley fight. He proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that he was an all-time great and one of the best fighters to have ever lived. Why? Because not only did he answer Shane Mosley's challenge, but he took everything very personally. He decided that he was going to go out there and he was going to show Shane Mosley not just who the better boxer was, but who the better fighter was. When he took the hellacious shot from Shane Mosley in the second round, and then he took another one in a series after he was in deep trouble, he was on the verge of getting knocked out in the second round. What did he do after that? He came out in the third round and he got in Shane Mosley's face. He put a high guard defense up. He came directly at Shane Mosley. He took his heart and his will in the third round, and for all intents and purposes, the fight was over. All right? Pacquiao, in responding to Mayweather's social media rants and, memes and all of these type of things, what have you, he clearly agitated Mayweather to the point where the public sentiment was behind Pacquiao, and you got the sense that it was going to be a high-pitched battle. It was going to be a war. He indicated as such. He told everybody that there was no reason to talk about the fight because the fight pretty much sold itself. He was stoic in his demeanor. He was adamant with Stephen A. Smith on ESPN, who, by the way, took their whole setup and moved it over to Las Vegas. This is something that you don't do, not for the sport of boxing. And he pretty much told Stephen A. Smith that he was going to knock Pacquiao out. He told him that. And he indicated that, I'd never forget the line he told him. One thing we know about Pac is, Pac ain't gonna go into survival mode like other fighters that face Floyd Mayweather. Really? So then all of a sudden you're the bigger man and you need the most space in the ring? You know what I mean? This is a guy that will tell you that he doesn't watch fights, he doesn't watch this, he doesn't watch. Mayweather is a student of the game, he's a student of history. When it comes to the sport of boxing, he's seen every significant prize fight that there is to see over the course of the last 50 years. I know he has. I know he studied the personality of Sugar Ray Robinson very, very well. His father obviously got in there with Sugar Ray Leonard. He studied Sugar Ray Leonard very, very well. He understands the business of boxing. He understands the moment that fighters faced when they were going into their biggest fights. This was the biggest fight of all time. And he decided that he was going to fight a safety-first fight and fight in such a way not to lose. And he lost a significant amount of would-be fans because of the way he performed in that fight. That's why he was booed in arenas. That's why people look at him indifferently now. Not because he's not talented, but because he finds a way to not win the fight, but to not lose it. And that's my problem with him. And, again, I speak for a number of people out there who can't quite figure out a way to voice their displeasure over what it is that they saw. You had people who knew nothing about boxing at all. You had the entire sports industry. You had the entire entertainment industry. You had a significant portion of the 1% in that building in the MGM Grand that night, and they all walked away feeling some kind of way about boxing, and not in a good way. And it's all Floyd's fault as far as I'm concerned. And for the record, no, I don't think he won the fight. I don't think that you can win a fight fighting not to lose and fighting an Olympic-style fight. There's amateur boxing and then there's professional boxing. Pacquiao, if he doesn't take the fight forward to Mayweather, what do we really have there? We have another maybe Juan Manuel Marquez situation from '09 because Marquez is a counterpuncher. But again, you can't be the bigger guy in the ring and needing the most space. And that was my problem with that fight. And that's why I decided to not give him certain rounds that I think that people just automatically gave him because he's pot shotting a jab and shooting an occasional right hand. That's not fighting to me.
Well, when I saw the fight again, I scored it 7-5 for Mayweather. There were clearly a lot of swing rounds.
Right.
Where I couldn't decipher who won. Both men
it's a very close fight. I mean, I have no problem with anybody saying that Mayweather won the fight, and you can't argue that. I'm just, for anybody that's going to watch this, I just want them to understand that point of view. This was not a hoping he loses type situation or whatever. And again, we've got the event sullied because of the controversy that revolved around, well, can he get this shot? Can he not? I mean, listen, you got a guy in Mayweather that fights only in Nevada because he can get his lidocaine injections. Let's be real about this. No other place in America can he go to fight and get steroids pumped into his fists to numb him. And as far as his hands being brittle and everything, but every fighter faces hand problems when they fight in the ring. So, no, I mean, if you can get injections in your hands for the biggest event that boxing has ever known, then why the fuck can't this guy get a shot in the shoulder? I'm just, listen, and he'll tell you that, oh, well, the Nevada State Athletic Commission said this and that, but he's the one that lobbied for USADA to get involved with the fight. And USADA said it was okay. And then the Nevada State Athletic Commission turns around and nullifies the situation. That's where I'm at with that. It's hard for me to really even talk about it because the letdown was so tremendous relative to the build up that it's really hard to put in words and surmise the level of disappointment that I have in that event.
And I agree with everything you just said 100%. Pacquiao should have been entitled to get that shot for his ailing shoulder. After the fourth
you just
round,
don't want something like that to be an issue. You know what I mean? You don't want it to be an issue, in a fight of that magnitude. And so, we're moving on, man. I mean, it's a shame that on May 3rd, instead of everyone talking about what it is that they just saw, and maybe some expensive clothes, going to the dry cleaners to get alcohol out of them, and everything else because people just had such a great time, whatever. On May 3rd, nobody was talking about the fight, or they didn't want to talk about it, and that to me is tragic. That's tragic. You know what I mean? Not for all of the hype that it engendered. And again, you're looking at a new crop of people, fighters who are on PBC. Al Haymon's done a great job in putting PBC in front of the nation. I think that from the initial event to where we're at right now, it's done nothing but do great things for boxing. But that fight could have helped all of those fighters exponentially in terms of the level of interest that fans would show to these fighters, and then at the same time help to build up more rivalry so you can get super fights so that they can get somewhere close to the numbers, not anywhere the enormity of what Pacquiao and Mayweather are able to do, but maybe they can get a really, really big fight because of the momentum that fight was able to carry forward for them, and it didn't do that. And so there's so many ripple effects that happen as a result of something being as negative as that fight wound up being. And but again, when you have a Miguel Cotto come out and stop Daniel Gill the way he did, and when you have Canelo Alvarez, absolutely obliterate James Kirkland the way he did, when Golovkin is running through people the way he had, Willie Monroe put up a good fight, and Golovkin walked through him. I know you have some things to say about that, but all he's doing is going out here and stopping people. People pay to see a knockout. It's one of the things I'm going to write about later today in this 12 fighters knock your ass out edition. And then of course I got to preview the Cotto and Canelo fight. But we don't come to see recitals. Nobody's into ballerina in boxing, and to me, what you got with Cotto and what Canelo brings to the table is an action fight. We know that Cotto is going to seek to put his hands on Alvarez, and Alvarez is going to do the same thing. Stylistically, I can't see anything but a barn burner with those two, and I really hope that Golovkin is able to get in. I want Ward to do something a couple weeks or a week or so from now, and start raising some eyebrows again too. The guy he's in with in a little bit here should bring out something in him to maybe get him back into the public lore and into the forefront of boxing. So I'm hopeful that can happen, and if Golovkin and Ward meet somewhere down the line, that we don't have a rerun of what just took place a little over a month ago.
I agree with you, and you're wearing your heart on your sleeve. You know,
Of course.
One last word on Mayweather, and then I'll
It's a
move on
sensitive situation.
to,
It always will be with me, man.
And Cotto and Canelo. You know, Mayweather won the fight. I would have liked to have seen him take more of a calculated risk in the ring, especially if he sensed that Pacquiao had a bum shoulder. But we spoke about this off the air. You know, weeks before the fight, I said, Taz, I have a bad feeling. Something stinks in the air. Sometimes in boxing, when you take 2 steps forward, you take 5 steps back.
And that's what happened
you know,
here.
De La Hoya Trinidad is a prime example. Chavez against Pernell Whitaker was another one. Lennox Lewis Holyfield, their first fight where Lewis clearly won. They scored the fight a draw. So hardcore boxing fans just deal with it. They roll with the punches, and they move on. It's just a shame that the casual boxing fan had left a real bitter taste in their mouth with the whole Mayweather-Pacquiao debacle. Now, along with Cotto and Canelo, like I said, Freddie Roach might not have made Cotto a better fighter, but he's made him a more confident fighter. And I liked when he was on his toes against Gil, he was throwing shots to the body. I don't know if he can beat Canelo. Cotto's Achilles heel remains his chin, while Canelo's most glaring weakness is his stamina issues. So I think the longer the fight goes, the better it is for Cotto, with the loose Cotto. It'll be a very, very interesting fight. The fight has to happen. We all saw Max Kellerman's post-fight interview with Cotto after his destruction of Gale. And he seemed like he wanted Canelo. He didn't exactly call Canelo out, but he said, he'll take some time off with his family and then he'll address Canelo. He was absolutely tongue-tied when they asked him about Triple G. You could see in his body language he absolutely wants no part of Triple G whatsoever.
No.
And I don't think I blame him. He's just we even addressed this. He's not even a natural junior middleweight. Forget about middleweight. He weighed 153 pounds, for the Gale fight.
Listen.
I think Andre Ward is better suited. If Andre Ward can make a statement and easily beat Paul Smith later on this month, which I think he should do,
right?
Then he takes a couple of tune-up fights under his belt, and maybe we can discuss Triple G against Andre Ward. But as far as Triple G goes, I wasn't really all that impressed with Willie Monroe. He looked a little bit soft. I think he fought down to the level of his opposition. Monroe presented him with a fighter who didn't stand in front of him, moved side to side, landed hellacious uppercuts on Triple G's chin at will. I mean, I can't remember the last time Triple G got hit that often, but like Triple G said in the post-fight interview, he wanted Monroe to land shots, and he didn't want the easy knockout because he wanted someone to give him rounds. So
and that's what you want as a fighter,
But here's my main thing with Triple G. He's great for the sport, and I'm old school. Like you and I differ in that sense. Like there are people who love to see knockouts, but I'm more of an old school guy. To me, boxing's the sweet science. Hit, not get hit. I like guys like Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker, James Buddy McGirt, who I grew up watching. I even like
let's look at your point right there.
He won a round Taz without even throwing a punch.
Let's look at your point there. You know what I mean? Like with Whitaker, all right? What did Whitaker do with Chavez? All right? Chavez, he stayed right in the pocket. You know what I mean? There were times in which he backed Chavez up in that fight. He clearly outboxed Julio Cesar Chavez. Clearly. All right? And I mean, he was, they were comparable in size and everything else. But there's no way that you can compare what took place a couple of weeks ago with that exhibition of boxing, which is, that's the sweet science. You know what I mean? It's like, again, we come to the arena, we turn on our TV sets, we get on the internet, we want to talk about, we want to see, we want to hear a knockout. That's what we want. You know what I mean? Call it bloodlust, whatever you want to call it, but that's really what this sport, or, to see a guy so skillfully manipulate the pocket or do certain things in a subtle way to offset the aggression of a guy in a way that's just beautiful to watch. Without a lot of movement, without a lot of clinching, without a lot of things to deliberately stop the action. That's what we want to see. And there are a number of boxers who've demonstrated that in the past. Floyd has demonstrated that in the past. He didn't do that in this fight. And so, as far as Triple G is concerned, I think that Golovkin, when you're stopping guys, first of all, it gets harder to stop guys at the elite level. When you start getting in there with A fighters, it's harder to knock these guys out. So you're going to need a little bit of time in there. You're going to need to do some things to be a little bit more nuanced against lesser opposition in anticipation for what a guy is going to present to you as an A fighter, such as a Ward. If if that fight ever materializes, Ward is an enigma still. We don't know what's going on with him. He could stink up the joint on June the 20th and have more people mad at him, but we don't know. But with Golovkin, here's a guy that's been dedicated to the game, over 300 amateur fights. According to multiple accounts, he's never been on the deck, never really been seriously hurt. So for him to carry Monroe, and he did, he carried Monroe Jr. He carried Stevenson, or Stevens rather. He carried a couple of guys in there. It's not his fault that he's not been in there with someone, that the world would consider truly special and elite. Now, in Cotto, in his last remarks, he mentioned that Golovkin, was a guy that people have been wanting to see him in there with as far as, Class A competition and things of this nature. Well, last time I checked, the last couple of times he's been in the ring, he's called out Miguel Cotto, who, by all accounts, thinks of himself as an A fighter. So when you're the lineal champion in any division, let alone the WBC middleweight champion, you're supposed to be the guy. And the guy that he beat to get that belt avoided Gennady Golovkin, Sergio Martinez. So you can't really be the pot calling the kettle black if you're Miguel Cotto in this situation. Now, I understand he has, I believe 16 gas stations in Puerto Rico. He's got multiple businesses. He's got a number of different things going on for him on the island of Puerto Rico, and God bless him. You know what I mean? But don't get into the fight, or stay into the fight game when you're not really going to chase glory, because that's ultimately what it's all about. He, again, as I said at the onset of this, he's been an ambassador for the sport. He's been fantastic for the island of Puerto Rico. He's an all-time great, I believe, and he's going to the Hall of Fame. He has nothing to not be proud of. I don't think he can beat Canelo Alvarez, and if he honors the third fight in his deal with Rock Nation and Jay-Z, great. But he doesn't owe the sport of boxing anything more. If you don't want to fight Golovkin, just say it. But we'll know a little bit more after he faces Canelo Alvarez, because apparently that fight is all but a done deal, and I'm excited for that.
Yes, and I love the post-fight press conferences after the Canelo and Triple G fight, where Canelo basically called out Cotto or Triple G, and Triple G did the same. He said, I'll face Cotto, I'll face Canelo, I'll face anyone.
Right.
But it was in a perfect world. I'd like to see Triple G face a guy. We saw him finally face a guy who doesn't stand in front of him and moves around the ring in Monroe, but I wouldn't mind seeing Triple G in against an Andy Lee or a Peter Quillen, somebody who has planet in both hands that could maybe hurt Triple G or get his attention. It was early in the Curtis Stevens fight where Stevens definitely got Triple G's attention. I wouldn't say he hurt him,
Sure.
but Triple G definitely felt the sting in Stevens' punch. So I would like to see Triple G face somebody with power before he gets into the ring with just somebody, anyone that could earn his respect and maybe just show the world that Triple G is human. Having said that, he's best for boxing right now. He's the most active champion. He continually scores knockouts. The casual fan loves him. The diehard fan adores him.
Right.
And he's all that's right with the sport of boxing. As far as Canelo against Cotto goes, before the fight was even spoke about, I thought Canelo would win easy. But now, I'm not so sure. I think Cotto, if he boxes, if he's on his toes, he can present Canelo with a touch.
He doesn't have the type of legs that a classic boxer has. He doesn't have the type of legs that a classic boxer has to move around and really, get into a game of outboxing Canelo Alvarez. He's an aggressive boxer puncher. That's what Miguel is. So at some point in time, early in the fight, the two of them are going to get into a war. It's going to escalate, and I anticipate that Miguel Cotto is going to start backing up. He's going to start busting up because his skin is brittle. He cuts and swells easily. This guy's a damaging puncher. He's a great, accurate combination puncher, Canelo Alvarez is. He's a counter puncher by nature, and if you stand in his wheelhouse to give him something that, of a target, he's getting ready to strike that. And so I just, Cotto is a banger. Obviously, he can do some things, he can do some damage to Canelo, but I think his youth, I think that, where he's at right now in the sport, relative to Miguel.